Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this is going to be a review for something I've wanted to do for a very long time now, and that, of course, is the final film in Adam Haskell's Nerd a Day Kick-Ass by Night franchise, number 2, part 2. And what number 2 part 2 is essentially about, if you haven't seen the other movies, then this isn't going to make sense to you, but basically, as we know, number 2 died, and now he is in heaven, and basically, he is very lonely. He misses the Batman cookie very deeply, and he really longs to get back to the real world because he's just very lonely there, and he ends up interacting with, Adam from, the original series, or Kick-Ass, whichever one you want to call him, and Kick-Ass is a lot more broken down. He is, just as adamant on going back to Earth, and basically the rest of the film is these two learning to move on from the events of their past, learning to connecting with each other, and basically trying to find a way to move on and get out of this, kind of permanent hell that they're really in, and that's really all I'm going to say. So number 2, part 2, I was obviously very interested in this movie. I mean, you guys know, I talked about it endlessly, I promoted it a lot, and that's just because, Adam's a good friend of mine, and especially after seeing Batman Cookie 4 and where this franchise has been able to go, I was very interested in seeing how this movie would turn out. He was very secretive and gave me very minimal details as to what the movie was really going to be, and that's really what I wanted. I wanted to go into it knowing pretty much nothing, and I came out of it immensely satisfied. Number 2, part 2 is a fantastic final film in this franchise. It honestly is everything that I think it really could be. It's a much different film than I expected, for sure, but it's definitely, I think, the best way to really wrap everything up, and I think alone just really shows how talented Adam really is, how talented a director Adam really is, but we're going to get into right now, starting off with the cast. And not much to say here, honestly, because similar to the first movie, this is very much a two-person film. There's a lot more at stake, and it's a lot bigger in scope, but in terms of acting, it really is only a two-person film. But let's first talk about Adam, because holy shit, I mean, just wow, I can't believe what Adam was able to pull off here, because think about this, guys. The first movie, he was great. The last movie I read to you guys, he was great as the Batman Cookie. He was very good. He was very sincere. You could tell the Batman Cookie, he was very old. He didn't really feel, he felt very broken down, and here he does do that, definitely. You do still see the Batman Cookie in this movie, but you also see him play, primarily, the Adam role is the main role in this movie, and that role is fantastic. I mean, Adam is someone who is so hurt, and he's just so broken from what happened. He's not the guy that he really used to be. And we go a lot more in depth with his character, more than we really ever have, and I think, honestly, he really did an incredible job with fleshing out this character. He just felt so real, and he felt like, someone who really was hurting, and I really love seeing the transformation that he does go through in this movie. Again, without spoiling anything, because this is a film that, very similar to, like, Infinity War and Last Jedi, it's really hard to talk about without spoilers, but what they do with him is fantastic, and he's playing, like, half a dozen other characters. Like, a lot of the other characters you're seeing in this movie are, in fact, played by Adam. He plays Sully, he plays Gizmo, he plays he plays a bunch of other characters in this movie that I'm not going to get into, but he really does an incredible job. He even plays number 2, I mean, the main character of this movie, he plays that character, and he does that very well, as well, and, again, just hats off to him, honestly. I mean, for any actor, this is very hard to pull off, and the fact that he was able to play 10 different characters in this movie with very distinctly different voices and personalities and different idiosyncrasies to each of their characters, I think alone is commendable, and I think definitely shows that Adam has a long way to go as an actor. He definitely is doing some incredible stuff, and I'm really hoping that, he is serious about this, because I genuinely do think he has a future here. And then Dustin Nichols as well, he was the standout in the last movie, and similar to Adam, he once again is fantastic. He does in fact play the awkward kid role again. He is back in this movie. I won't spoil what he does in this film, but let's just say, if you thought that awkward kid was sinister and very brutal and just completely, a horrible person, you haven't seen anything yet. He is at the worst he's ever been in this movie. So inhumane. He is out for blood. He wants revenge against people that have wronged him, and he just does an incredible job. There is a fantastic scene in this movie, and it's almost completely without dialogue. In fact, for Dustin, it is without dialogue, and it's just incredible. You can tell exactly what this character is feeling in every scene he's in, and it just astounds me. It really does astound me how great Nichols really is in this role, and he's just great. He really is great in this role. He does come back as the Dustin character as well, but mainly he is, like I said, the awkward kid role. He does such a great job, and once again, Adam and Dustin just have such great chemistry throughout this movie. They work very well together, and the acting here is just phenomenal. Really, they both did a fantastic job here. But now let's get to the directing and the writing, because this is really what I want to talk about. Now, I know many of you haven't seen this film, and I know that this is a bit of a stretch, but this really is, if you've seen this film, which I hope you do, I will leave a link to the full film down below, because I do definitely think it's worth checking out. This film is very much a more lower budget, much more indie version of Infinity War. I mean, really, think about it. It's juggling all these different characters in all these different places, and it has all these different tones to it, and it's fantastic. I think it's the most well-directed out of any movie in this franchise, because it balances so many different things. Sure, it is very dark, and it is a very heavy movie, just like the last one. In fact, it's even more heavier than the last one. This one deals with a lot more serious themes, but it does have a little bit more levity in there. There's actually a lot more humor in this film, and it's incorporated surprisingly very well. That could have been something that was really jarring and just didn't fit in the film, and just, stripped out all the comedy. And this is a trend that a lot of the, the genuine sense of it all. And this is a trend we see in a lot of movies of this kind, where you'll have a really serious scene and then they just crack a joke. This movie does not do that. There are scenes where they do crack jokes, but the scene still feels emotional. It doesn't undercut any of what's going on, and I think that just the directing is spot on. It really is. I was so impressed by it. There are points where this movie is terrifying. There are points when this movie is just incredibly sad and tragic. There are points this movie is hilarious. I mean, it really, I mean it when I say it, it really does have a little something for everyone. The only thing this movie doesn't really have is like a romance, which it actually does, thinking about it. I'm not going to say how, but it does actually sort of have a romance, but that's like the only genre that's not in this movie, and I think it's just incredible how he was able to balance all the tones. It's crazy, what he was able to do here. But now I do really want to talk about the screenplay. That was easily the best thing about the last movie. It was so simplistic. It had such a great story. This one is not that at all. It is much more complex. There is a lot more at stake in this movie, and that is to be expected. It is the final film in the franchise, and while it is called Number 2 Part 2, it's not really his movie. This is much more of Kick-Ass's movie, and getting into Adam's character and everything that he's been through. Number 2 is just kind of at, the helm of everything. Like, every major thing that happens in this movie, Number 2 is somehow a part of. So it does make sense for this to be a sequel to Number 2, but like I said, it's much more of Adam's movie, and I think it works very well in that way, because one of the best things about this movie is when you get to Number 2 and you get to Adam, these two are very broken people. However, they handle it in much different ways. Number 2 is much more subtle about it. He's very to himself, and you can tell that he is hurting, but he's still able to function. Adam is the complete opposite. He is completely stripped so much of his emotion, and he just feels so hopeless in this world, and you can just tell he doesn't really even see a reason to be around anymore. He just feels like he's trapped in heaven, and he wants to go back to Earth, and the contrast between these two I thought was so strong. I really did love the connection that they eventually form, and like I said, this movie deals with some incredibly heavy themes of, things like things that I don't really want to spoil, but it deals with themes like loss and abandonment and how you are, similar to the last movie, how are you supposed to go on when, you're the only one left. Just loss of care for things. It's very well handled in that way, and I definitely really did love it. There is a great scene where we really do see why Adam is the way he is. We really do flesh out a lot about his character, and I think it's very well handled in that way. However, conversely, we also do that with the awkward kid. The awkward kid, we saw him in the last movie. Everything about him was basically, he was a fraud. He was a complete fraud. He fooled them all. Nothing about him was sincere. Here, we really get to see who this guy is, and he is terrifying. I don't want to get into who he really is, but the build-up for his character is just as strong as the eventual payoff. Once we do get into who his character is and why he does what he does, I could have not been more satisfied. I think it was so well handled, and it worked perfectly for this character, and I think they did a really great job with that. But the story in general, like I said, it's a very complex story. There's a lot going on, but it never feels convoluted. It never feels like there's just too many cooks in the kitchen. It does feel like it does have a genuine focus, and I really do commend Adam for doing that. That is a very tough job to pull off, and I think he did a really great job at balancing all the storylines here. Because like I said, there'll be a scene where it cuts to number 2 and Adam in heaven, and then we'll cut to something really crazy that's going on, with Awkward Kid. And I did see a movie very similar to this one recently, and that is Adrift. I haven't reviewed Adrift for you guys, but similar to this movie, there will be a crazy scene, and then it's undermined by just some calm scene of the two getting to know each other. I will review that movie eventually in like a catch-up review. But that's really the biggest problem with that movie. The difference is here, the reason it works is because of the fact that it's not all happy. It's not completely different. I mean, what's going on with Awkward Kid is just as, it's just as shocking and just as attention-grabbing as what's going on with Adam and number 2. And again, yes, it does cut between the two, but it's very sporadic in that way. It feels very well-paced, and I just really loved everything about the writing. There's so many great jokes in there. The film also does a very good job at really addressing a lot of the running gags in the previous films. Because I've said this to you guys before, movies like Nerd at Day, Kick-Ass by Night, they're not serious movies. These are movies that these guys are just fucking around with, and it's really impressive that Adam was actually able to take stuff that we've made fun of for years in those movies and actually give them a reason, actually explain what's up with that, why is this happening, what is the real reason that things happen between these two, I don't want to get into it, but it was honestly really well done, and I was really impressed with how much thought and care was put into this. I mean, this is something that I feel like most directors would just ignore, and Adam is one of those directors where he acknowledges very well that this did happen and there was actually a reason for it. He makes it seem intentional, and he did a great job with that. I really loved everything about the writing. Also, going back to the comedy, like I said, there's a lot of heavy stuff in this movie, but don't think that there's not comedy in there, because there is. There's this one character especially, this Sully character, and oh my god, easily some of the funniest stuff I think I've seen all year. I mean, just the gag that they do with Sully, it's something where it could have gotten really tiring, but luckily they don't use him a lot. He's actually very sporadic in the film, and he provides some really great comedy stuff. The Dustin character as well is played very much for laughs, because there's just not really much to him. There's not really anything deep or complex about the Dustin character, and there's one running gag with him where it's incredibly random, but it just really works for this franchise, and considering how random and ridiculous the franchise has really become, it's one of those things you just really buy, and I think they really did handle it very well. Like I said, the dramatic moments were so great that it made the comedy stick out that much more, and I think it was very well implemented here. At no point did it feel out of place. However, as good as this movie is, it still is not perfect, and I will say right now why. First of all, right off the bat, there are some scenes here and there that do feel a bit jumbled. Sometimes the tone does feel a bit jarring, but most of the time it is very, very, it's very consistent. And there's not really a time where it took me out of the movie or anything like that. I thought the tone was pretty consistent throughout. Once in a while, though, there was a joke that didn't land or something like that. There are a couple scenes that were just a bit awkward to me. I didn't know if I was supposed to laugh or not. However, in regards to the awkward kid, pretty much everything they do with him was great, minus one plot point. There's one plot point in this movie that I do think is actually really interesting, and they could have done a lot with this plot point. It's just the way that it's handled, it just didn't work. I found it to be a little bit too over the top, just a little bit too cartoony. I understand what Adam was trying to do. It is a cool idea, but just for me, it just did not work. And it was one of those things where it was supposed to be serious, and I honestly did find it kind of laughable. It just didn't really work for me as much as I think, you know, he intended it to. So other than that, though, there really isn't too many things with this movie. The cinematography also is fantastic here. There's so many great shots in this film. It's one of those films where you can just pause it and you'll see just the artistry and how well crafted it is. I mean, there really is something amazing about a lot of shots here. There's one shot particular that is just, it really sticks in my mind, and I really think it's something great. The score, again, similar to the last movie, no, this is not an original score. No, this is not original music. But again, this, you know, he's not getting paid for this. It's not like he's able to get a professional composer. You know, he has to work with the resources he has, and I think he utilized it very well. I thought the music was very well implemented. I thought that the choices, you know, the musical choices that he had for each song, I thought those were very well handled. I thought they were incorporated very well with the story. So yeah, I did think that the score was very well done, despite, again, not being original. And then the editing, like I said, this movie is much longer than the other movies in the franchise. They've all been like an hour long. This one is over 2 hours, and it needed to be. It's a very meaty, very detailed story. There's a lot that goes down. It really does benefit from the slow pace in the film. It does take a while for things to really get going, but once it does, it's very well handled. And it really does go in a lot of directions that I was not expecting. There is a major twist in the third act of this film, and I did not expect it to go there. I really didn't. And it's one of those things where, yes, it is very jarring at first, but it definitely does work. It's not like one of those things where it's like, no, this has no bearing on the story whatsoever. No, this absolutely does work, and it definitely did, I think, was probably the best twist for this story. Again, the ending is great. It's very emotional. It's a really great wrap-up. Ultimately, number 2, part 2 is just everything I think a final movie should aspire to be. It's emotional. You feel that finality in it. You really do get a lot more into these characters. It takes a franchise that was just kind of 2 guys goofing off and really does expand it into something much bigger and something much more profound. Now, unlike the last movie, you can't really go into this film without watching the other franchise because there's all kinds of jabs and things like that, but I think this film alone just really does show the talent that Adam does have. Again, I'm not just saying that because he's my friend. I genuinely think he is very talented. I genuinely think he does have a future, and I think it's definitely something for all you guys to check out. It's that much better than Batman Cookie 4. This film actually fixed a huge problem I had with Batman Cookie 4 and corrected it, and it did it in an outstanding manner. I can't believe they actually fixed it in the way they did. And again, I'd love to talk to you guys about it, but I'm going to be doing an interview with Adam and Dustin on Monday, and any of the stuff that I really want to tell you guys about, I will ask them on there, because I definitely do have quite a few things to talk to them about, and I'm very interested in seeing how that goes. But either way, guys, this is definitely a film that I highly recommend you guys to check out. I can understand if you're not interested, but trust me, guys, it is definitely worth checking out for sure. It is the definition of, like I said, an almost perfect final film. It has almost no flaws whatsoever, and I think it just really cements Adam as this really amazing director that I think definitely has potential to go far. And I am going to give number 2, part 2 overall in A. Seriously, guys, go see this movie. There are too many films that come out nowadays, and they just feel like these corporate, very safe films that came out. A film I saw actually today that I'll be reviewing, it just feels very safe. It's not bad, but it doesn't really feel like it's pushing any boundaries and it's really doing anything different. This really does. This is very different from what you expect it to be, but I think is definitely the right direction to take this franchise for sure. Either way, guys, for this video, hope you guys enjoyed it. Please check out number 2, part 2 if you haven't. Like I said, I will be doing an interview on Monday. If you guys have any questions, submit them in. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoy. We'll see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.